as the wheels turn beneath you, chasing future to your past, doubling your vision, falling tears on broken glass. I look out of the window, mirror on my fears, biting light shows no respite until the blue of night is near. Oh, I don't know what I want, but I know the way I feel. This energy between us has never felt so real.
Hello and welcome to the Jenni Makes Podcast. This is a podcast primarily about knitting, but with a good sprinkling of other crafts along the way. Today it is primarily about knitting. I'm trying to think if there's actually anything else I'm going to show that's not knitting. No, I think we're just knitting today. This is Phoebe, one of my cats. Don't know if she'll be here to stay, but she's here right now. And I have another cat, Moose, who sometimes likes to make an appearance. So yeah, hi, welcome. This is episode 4. There's been a little bit of a gap. Life's been busy. But yeah, I'm here. And I think this will be quite a short little episode. I've not been up to loads and been knitting quite monogamously, but we'll see how we get on. Apologise if the lighting's a bit rubbish today. I have a very basic setup which consists of an iPad balanced on top of a clothes horse in my spare room, and it's a pretty grey and overcast day here. I live in Newcastle in the northeast of England, and though the weather's often not too bad here, I think now that we are deep into November, there's probably going to be more days like this. I'm recording with my boyfriend in the flat. Don't know how much you can hear me. I'm trying not to be put off too much by that. I've got a week of annual leave this week for my birthday, and he's taken the week off as well. So yeah, trying not to be too put off by the fact he can maybe hear me sat talking away to myself. But let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to talk about I don't actually have with me, which I kind of dislike doing, but I guess that's how it is. It's been probably about a month since I last recorded, I think. So yeah, there's been a lot of changing in projects, unraveling. Anyway, I'm not going to jump the gun with that. So the first project I'm going to talk about is a Sophie scarf that I started, finished and gave away in the time since I've recorded my last episode. So I'll try and put a picture in. So if you haven't heard of the Sophie scarf, where have you been? I think everyone and their mother's cat has knitted one. It's basically just a very simple garter stitch scarf with a I-cord edging either side, which you kind of very gradually increase up to a point and then decrease down again, and it makes just like a cute little kind of neckerchief scarf. Oh, the cat is sorry. So my other cat, Phoebe, who's on my lap, is a sweet baby angel. Moose, on the other hand, who is that's you can hear in the background, is a bit more mischievous, and she's currently trying to get behind the wardrobe, which is opposite me. I'm a little bit worried that she's going to jump on the clothes horse. Moosey! Let's see if she can be enticed onto my lap. Come on, Moosey! Come on! Come on! Moosey girl! Yes. So there she is. So she's the brown one. She's the yarn obsessed one. You're the naughty one, aren't you? You're going to sit on my lap. Hopefully try not to get her to just show her bottom to you. We don't need to see that. We don't need to see the little cat butthole, please. So yes, the Sophie scarf. Oh, come on, Moose. Come on, make yourself comfy. Oh, she's found the yarn. She's also found a hair bubble. She loves hair bubbles. I thought that was quite a harmless thing to give her. I thought she was just playing with them until I realised that she was chewing them and then potentially swallowing them. So yes, we'll keep that one out of the way. Okay, now I've got double cats. You can just about see their backs and their ears, but they're here. Right, Sophie scarf. So yeah, everyone's knit one. I actually enjoyed the process of knitting this one a lot more than one I did earlier on in the year. I did one in a black silk and mohair, silk 4-ply and then silk mohair combination for a friend, which was super luxurious, but I think a lot of people have said that even though it's a really simple pattern, increasing, like being able to count your increases in garter stitch is actually surprisingly tricky. And I'd read comments about that on Ravelry and was like, oh, it's fine, like I'm quite comfortable reading my knitting, and actually I really struggled. And I guess that's probably because it was black mohair that I was doing in the earlier one. This one I did in a hot pink single ply pure wool from Retrosaria, Rosa, Poma. One of my favourite, pretty much my favourite yarn brand. I wish her on about their various different bases in previous episodes. So this base, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it right, but I think it's Joao, maybe. But yeah, it's a lovely rustic single ply yarn, DK I want to say, and the hot pink colour was so vibrant that I don't think my phone camera could really cope with it, so it kind of blew out in every picture that I took. But yeah, that ended up being a gift. I was feeling a bit sort of stuck between projects the last time, like after the last time I podcasted, like I wasn't feeling particularly enthusiastic about anything. I was quite tired. It felt like my attention span was reduced to that of a gnat. So I was like, you know what, I'll cast on a little palette cleanser. I kind of intended to keep it for myself because I really love that colour, but I was halfway through it and realised that it was my boyfriend's dad's partner's birthday, get that right, that I'd missed, and she really appreciates, well, I think she does, I've knitted her stuff before and she seems to like it, so I was like, right, well, I don't really need another little scarf, I've got plenty of things like that, so I finished that and gave it to her, which I think she liked. But yeah, like not loads to say about it really. It's kind of a funny one where the pattern is so simple I almost resented paying for it, but it does have lovely lovely details in it, like the I-cord edgings, like very neat. And I think I will make another one for myself, maybe in some kind of like leftover mohair or something, because they're just nice and small. I think they're great if you've like gone to a cafe and like it's still a little bit chilly in the cafe, wearing there, I don't know. So yeah, that's my only finished object actually, not finished anything else. But yeah, like I say, hopefully I've managed to put a picture up so you can see. Second thing, well, it's not a finished object, but I guess like the second thing I'm going to chat about kind of follows on from like a lengthy discussion I had in my previous episode. So for anyone who's watched that episode, you'll know that I was knitting the Bonny cardigan, but I was having some serious reservations, let's say, about the yarns I was using, about the size, about the gauge. It's just, yeah, I think I knew that it wasn't going to work out, but I was just kind of doing that thing, like knitting blindly ahead. And yeah, I think like I was saying, like, I think because I've been quite busy and wasn't able to give it like the time and headspace to like sit down and look at it and be like, okay, this isn't going to work. So actually, after I recorded, I think the cardigan just sat in a bag for a week or two, and then I unravelled it. So I was using 2 yarns held together, and I think where a lot of my issues stemmed from, not all, but some of the issues was that the pattern, so it's the Bonny cardigan that I was initially knitting, by Orlanne Sucche, who's a lovely designer, has lots of beautiful patterns. I've knitted a few things by her in the past. just a lovely simple cardigan with like kind of a bomber style, with like a sloping collar that I really liked. Just like a very beautiful, like basic cardigan, but with a few like thoughtful details added in, which I think Orlanne does really well. But basically that pattern calls for a DK weight yarn, and I had 2 yarns in stash that I had initially thought were both 4-ply, and then when on closer inspection looking at the yarn labels, realised they were both sport weight. So already I was kind of knitting a fabric that was sort of denser, but then as it transpired, one of the yarns I was knitting with was actually incorrectly labelled, so it was actually a DK. So I was kind of ploughing ahead thinking, oh, like this fabric's a bit rigid. I had swatched and blocked it and was like, oh, it'll be fine, it'll just be like a jacket, like it'll be really warm and thick. But the more I knitted with it, the more I felt like the fabric was going to be too rigid. I was also in between sizes and sized up, and I just think the combination of like the too rigid fabric and it being maybe a bit too big and not having the drape to sort of counteract that, I suppose. So anyway, I unravelled it, enlisted the help of my boyfriend to unravel it, because it was 2 balls, like 2 yarns held together, and I wanted to separate them and use them in different projects, and so that was a bit of a headache to do that. So we sat and watched an episode of something, and he very kindly held on and wound up one ball, I held on to the other. Anyway, all of this to say, I have now repurposed one of those yarns. So one of the yarns I was using was a undyed DK yarn from Black Eye Yarns called Auchen, and that was the one that had initially been labelled indicating it was sort of sport weight yarn, and actually turns out it's a DK. Which again, I go into far more detail in the previous episode. The owner, Julie of Black Eye Yarns, had been very transparent at the time when she realised the error with the yarn, but I just somehow managed to miss all of her sort of like releasing of information that it had been incorrect. So I think, I don't know, I must have missed her Instagram post, but she like put out newsletters and things. Anyway, I missed that, so didn't see it. But anyway, she's very kindly sent me an extra skein and a half of yarn, so I'll have enough to finish the project. And she still had sort of the same batch and all that, so that was good. Very kind of her to sort that out for me. Anyway, so I feel like that was a very long preamble about a project that I'm not knitting anymore and not going to show you. So now I have cast on the Levitate wrap. Now I feel like the cats are suddenly very interested because the yarn is moving. So apologies if I have to wrestle them off this project. It's a pretty difficult stage to show, but yeah, basically I am knitting, yeah, it's very hard to show. I'm knitting the Levitate wrap by My Favourite Things Knitwear. It is a wrap cardigan, knitted up in, well, I'm using 1 strand of DK and 1 strand of a silk mohair. The silk mohair is by Onion Yarns in this sort of grey purple tone. It's very pretty. I really like how the yarns look held together. But yeah, so it's a wrap cardigan. It's got like a double knitted on edging right around, I guess, where the button, like the opening would be, and then also along the bottom edge. So I've done the front openings. This is very difficult to show. Also, I'm like trailing yarn on the cat's heads, and I feel like that's going to be one temptation too far. And then I've just started the bottom edging. I don't know if you can see that. So you kind of work back and forth in double knitting, and at the end of each row where you meet the body of the cardigan, you like knit 2 stitches together, like work 2 stitches together to kind of incorporate it, I guess. So it'll be going like that way, so it'll be right along the edge. So far I'm really enjoying how this is knitting up. It feels amazing. It's going to be so cozy. Thoughts on the pattern. So I think I just knew as soon as I started knitting that, that the gauge was right, and I think that's the kind of thing I've been ignoring with the Bonny cardigan. I think I've just been ploughing on, even though it's sort of hurting my hands a little bit, the fabric was being kind of crunchy, I just ignored my intuition. So working that, it's just, I feel like it's come together really quickly. It's a construction I really enjoy. So you cast on like the back neck and increase out until it's sort of the width of your shoulders, knit down flat until you're at the point of the armhole, and then you pick up either side for kind of each shoulder, and again work down until you pass the armholes, and then join, so it's one piece, and then knit the rest of it, while also increasing because it's a wrap cardigan, so it's going to cross over. So it's a style I've never really knitted before. Yeah, it's a bit different from kind of the things I normally wear, but it looked really cosy, and it's something I've had my eye on for quite a long time. And I still just want to use, like, continue that momentum of like using yarns that I have in stash, because I think that was a real goal of mine for 2023, and we're nearing the final month of 2023, and I still have a lot of yarn in stash that I want to use up. So it's good to have goals. Didn't really stick to them that well, but there we go. So now, yeah, I've knitted the body, I've gone round the full opening and knitted that double knitted band opening, whatever you call it, knitted on button band. I mean, it's not a button band because there's no buttons, but you know what I mean. I'm a bit, I'm hoping it kind of blocks out, but I mean, it's very hard to show this with two cats on my lap because I don't want to like entice them by waving the yarn in front of them. But so the way that you knit the, I'm going to call it a button band for want of a better word, is that you go around the front opening once you've like finished knitting and pick up one stitch for every row, and then you knit on the button band. So that kind of means that it's really important that your row gauge is correct, and I often have problems with my row gauge. So I think I was overcompensating and doing it, maybe doing it a bit too loose on this first layer. See how it's kind of like wobbling a little bit? Because I was worried it was going to pull. Sorry, the cats are now like, oh, yarn. How exciting, Moose. Yes, it's yarn. We don't eat it though. Yeah, I don't know if I was overcompensating and knitting a bit too loosely because now it looks like it's waving a little bit, but I think maybe in this like occasion, if it's going to be slightly wrong or slightly off, it's maybe better if it's too loose than too tight, because I was worried if it was too tight it would pull up the cardigan, it would be kind of too cropped, and maybe it would cause the main fabric to bunch. Anyway, I also think that my gauge got tighter the more of the button band I knitted, so yeah, I'm really hoping that blocking just sorts everything out. But I actually really enjoyed the process of doing the double knitting. I've never done double knitting before, and I've never done the knitted on button band before, and at first I was like, oh no, this is going to be really tedious because you're sort of going back and forth and you're only knitting on a small number of stitches for each row, and there's a lot of stitches to incorporate. But no, I've actually really enjoyed the process of it. So just need to knit entirely around the bottom, which I think is going to take a long time because I'm sure I've got over 200 stitches, and then go on to the sleeves, and then it'll be done. So it's come together quite quickly. I do think the sleeves are quite oversized, so they might take a little bit longer than I'm anticipating, but I'm also not ruling out maybe slimming them down a little bit. I recently got a new jacket, which I sized up so that I could get my knitwear underneath it, but I think if I'm wanting to be able to wear that one underneath, I probably can't have things that have really thick sleeves or really wide sleeves, so we'll see, I might modify it slightly. Have to say that it's maybe not the clearest of patterns. So my favourite thing's Knitwear. I think she's a Scandinavian, maybe Danish designer. So I don't know if there's sometimes like some translation issues, but I think if it hadn't been for some very helpful project pages on Ravelry, I would have been quite stuck. The initial instructions about sort of starting off the back and like where you pick up for the shoulders, I found that all fine, and maybe that's just because I've done that construction before, so it was quite familiar. but the button band, I had to go up and look at a few videos and then also look at a few other Ravelry users, kind of helpful notes. So I would definitely say if you're thinking about knitting this pattern, I would go and look at the finished projects and kind of filter by helpful projects, and you'll find a few on there that are really good. So yeah, it's not been the clearest, which I guess is like slightly frustrating when you pay for a pattern and you feel like you've got to go and like kind of find information from a few other sources, but I've got there now. I think there's also some incorrect stitch counts, but I wasn't paying too much close attention to the stitch counts anyway, because yeah, I've modified it a little bit. I wanted to make it a little bit longer, which sort of meant that because you're increasing for like the crossover in the front, it's not just a case of adding length, you also had to kind of continue with that increased rate, otherwise you'd get like a bit of an odd like step, if that makes sense. If you're kind of like increasing like that and then like you were just to knit straight, it would kind of just go straight. I don't know if that makes sense. So I knew my stitch count would be off anyway, but I think they were also just incorrect for some of the sizes, which I guess is like a bit of a shame. Anyway, so far so good, and I'm already kind of thinking about knitting one in another colour, but I need to not get ahead of myself. Get this one finished first. I'm hoping it'll be finished by Christmas, and I'm hoping it'll be almost like an equivalent of like a socially acceptable outdoor dressing gown, like with the wrap style. But yeah, that's probably all I need to say about that for now. I just love the squishy button band. Oh, it feels so good. So that's that. Definitely better in this form than the Bonny cardigan. I think I should have realised earlier that wasn't right. Sorry if I'm like, I don't know what that is on my knitting. Is it a bit of wood? Is it? I don't know. Anyway. Right, so I've been knitting fairly monogamously on that, really. Yeah, like nothing, I feel like my concentration span seems to have remained quite short. And I think when that happens I end up just sticking to one project, which is fine because it means I make quite good progress on that one project. I'm just going to refer to my notes and see that I'm not having a mind blank. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? Yeah, no, I think that's about it. So I guess this is going to be a shorter episode today, which is fine, but I've got a couple of knitting plans that I'd like to share. So I was really disappointed that the Bonny cardigan didn't work out. I really wanted that cardigan. I think it would fit really well into my wardrobe and just be like a very cozy, versatile piece, and it's the sort of thing that I want now. Like now that it's cold, I want that sort of weight cardigan. So I have just come back from a few days away in London, and when in London, particularly when visiting a friend who's also creative and a hand knitter, occasionally, she's mainly a machine knitter actually, but she also can hand knit. So what else are you going to do when in London other than go on a mini yarn shop crawl? So I might have bought a sweater quantity to do a bonny in a yarn that's actually the right thickness for the pattern, so I don't make the same mistake again. So I have bought a sweater quantity of this beautiful pure wool in this gorgeous, I feel like it is not, maybe that's kind of the colour. It's like a very vibrant, almost Christmassy green with beautiful flecks of like different colours in it. It's very pretty. So this is a DK wool by Studio Donegal, which is spun in Ireland, and it smells amazing and it's so squishy. So I have 5 balls of this. I'm kind of in between sizes and it feels, yeah, I think I went through a phase a few years ago knitting things that were a bit too small, or at least not too small but didn't have the ease that I really wanted and that was maybe shown in pattern pictures, and I was kind of a bit disappointed sometimes. So now I'm really trying to be mindful of how much ease I want in my garments and how that doesn't always necessarily mean knitting the size based on my measurements almost, but like thinking about ease and things. I don't know, that's probably quite an obvious thing to say, but I still sometimes forget that. So this jumper, for example, is like definitely like a couple of sizes bigger than maybe what I would have made in the past, but I'm really happy with like how much ease it has, and it just feels like a very comfy, sloppy jumper, which I did mean to say in the beginning actually is, if anyone's interested, it is the sweater number 18 by My Favourite Things Knitwear, and I knit it in one strand of Shetland DK by Border Mill, which is a beautiful, beautiful worsted spun Shetland, which I'd never worked with a worsted spun Shetland before. I'd only ever worked with woolen spun, and it was so nice to work with. Their colour range is gorgeous. So I had one strand of that and then one strand of a silk mohair by Filcolana. I think their silk mohair is called Tilia, so it just makes this like beautiful squishy fabric. Anyway, I've got totally sidetracked. So yeah, I bought 5 balls of this, which will definitely be enough to knit the 3rd size. I'm kind of in between the 2nd and the 3rd size, but I guess I want to give myself options. I also think that in the pattern, the pictures on the model, the cardigan looks quite long, and I might not do it quite as long as it's shown, but we'll see. It's good to have options. So it took all of my self-control not to like swatch for this on the train home, because I did have the right needle size, but they were currently attached to the Levitate wrap, and I was like, don't fall into that trap. Don't take the needles off your current project. Particularly when I was kind of very enthusiastically knitting on that project. So that is the plan. It might, I mean, I really want to cast it on soon, but I wonder if it might end up being like a Christmas Eve cast on. Just because it's been something that's sort of been in the back of my mind to cast on for a lot of this year, and I think I'll feel lovely and festive with this green colour, so we'll see how we get on. On my way back from London, I stopped with my parents, because they're sort of in between, I guess, Newcastle where I live and London. They live kind of in the Lake District, or like the edge of the Lake District, and I was sitting happily knitting away in my parents' living room, and yeah, just sort of talking about how relieved I was that I didn't have any Christmas knitting plans, no obligation knitting, because I'm usually someone who's knitting somebody a jumper for Christmas, and that often entails me pulling an all-nighter sort of on the 23rd in order to get it done, and handing over a present which still has loose ends. And I was just saying how grateful I was that I wasn't in that position. So my mum thought that was a great time to say, can I have a pair of socks for Christmas? But when your mum asks for a pair of socks for Christmas, then how can you deny her? Particularly when her feet are actually quite small. So a few weeks ago, I picked up a ball of West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply, which when I use I'm going to say superwash yarn because I do think it is superwash. When I use a superwash commercial yarn, this is my absolute go-to. I have knitted loads of pairs of socks in this yarn. I love their bird-themed colourways. This one is called Green Woodpecker. And I just think the price point's really good. I've made a lot of pairs for my boyfriend and they've held up really well. So Mum is going to get a pair of socks in the Green Woodpecker. And it kind of feels Christmassy, but I don't think it is a Christmas shade. It looks a little bit like their Hollyberry shade, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. But I hopefully it'll be a pair that she wears all year round. She also, I mean, the conversation totally snowballed from me being like, okay, I've not got any gift knitting, to like, okay, I'll do a pair of socks, to my mum also does a lot of outdoor swimming, and she'd read an article talking about the excellent properties of wool in sort of the clothes that you wear when you've come out of cold water, and how much better wool is than sort of acrylic. So I sort of then offered to knit her a hat as well, so I don't know. I make a rod for my own back, but let's try and not be knitting those things on the 23rd. Note to self. And certainly I shouldn't start the Bonny cardigan before I've got those kind of well underway. I think that is about it for today. The cats are very chill and comfortable. It's nice that they've decided to make an appearance. Moose has like buried her head into my jumper, and yeah, Phoebe's just happily perched. I kind of toyed with showing them today, but they're kind of in a very early development stage. But I've started to make some Christmas decorations made out of felt and then embroidered based on the cats. But I've done a couple of versions which I'm not happy with, and I'm midway through a third version, but I've not sewn eyes on the cat yet, and it just looks a bit weird, so that might be something that pops up next episode. But I think for now I might sort of sign off and say goodbye. But thank you for joining me for another episode. I hope the light hasn't been too rubbish. I'm pretty sure it's a little bit grainy, but I apologise for that. I'm working with a very basic setup, which I hope to one day improve, but for now it's just me in the spare room, looking at my clothes drying on the air with the iPad precariously perched on top. So I think that's it for today. Happy knitting, and hopefully join you next time. Bye!